Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. When I was 10 years old, my grandparents retired from Long Island and moved to Palo Alto, California. And my dad decided that he would fly out there to meet us when we got there, and my mom said, okay, packed up the station wagon, pulling a trailer behind with myself, my brother, my sister, and our dog, and drove cross country. Took a couple of weeks to do that. I remember most notably Texas, where we met the great aunts and great uncles, and they told us the family history. And we went to the Grand Canyon, and my mother, who was terrified of heights, stayed in the parking lot and kept shouting at us, "Don't get near the edge." We went to a Navajo reservation. I went to a tiny grammar school. There were 15 of us in the 6th grade, but we had Navajo pen pals, and we got to meet them and exchange small gifts and share a meal with them. Those were some of my great memories, and then driving through the desert at night so that the car wouldn't overheat because we were pulling a trailer. And so my mom said, I need you kids to stay awake, to help me stay awake as we drive all night to get through the desert. A couple of things about that trip really stuck with me. One of them is I never saw my mother open a map. Amazing to me. The other thing is, after spending weeks of sleeping in a camper bunk bed with brother, sister, dog, mother, I was ready to go home. And I felt like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, there's no place like home, there's no place like home. In February, I drove from Las Vegas to Death Valley and then the Grand Canyon and did this road trip. And as soon as I entered Death Valley, the screen that shows you where you're going turned into a grid. And my cell phone had no service. And when I got to the kiosk, because I was kind of coming in a sideway, got to the kiosk and there were no maps left. And I thought, well, that's fine. I'll get a map when I get to the ranger station. Took me an hour to find the ranger station. So driving around with no idea of where I was going. And I thought, that's so important to me to have a sense of where I'm going and having that map and that GPS that we've come to rely on. Today we're still in the Easter season, right? And in the beginning of the Easter season, we have these glorious stories, resurrection stories of what Jesus does when he comes back. But as we near ascension, when Jesus ascends into heaven, and then the 10 days later, the Pentecost, the stories go back to the end of the gospel. And so that's what we're hearing today. It's called the farewell discourse. In the Gospel of John, he is talking to the disciples the night before he dies. And he had not told the disciples throughout the gospel that I'm going to die and on the third day be resurrected like he did in the other gospels. So there they are at Jerusalem the night before the crucifixion. They're thinking, we're ready to go, and Jesus is giving lists of instructions of what to do, how to live, what's going to happen next. And he starts out by saying, do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. You see, he knows how we are. He starts out with, do not let your hearts be troubled, just like the angels say, fear not. Because the minute he starts talking about we're going somewhere else, their hearts start pounding. And he says, in my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I prepare a place for you? And they're thinking, so we're going back to Nazareth, to your father's house, which we've seen, and it's 2 rooms. But you're telling us like he's prepared rooms for all of us? That can't be. Maybe the temple, like the temple's the place you worship, but he calls that his house, so maybe, and just really confused, not understanding what's going on. And he says then, and I will come again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the place I'm going. And that's when Thomas jumps in and says, we don't have a clue. We have no idea what you're talking about. We're totally lost here, and you're not speaking clearly about what's happening next. Now I'm going to step aside for just a moment and ask you to envision the favorite home of your childhood. Maybe that was your home or your grandparents' home or your neighbor's home or a cabin or maybe a place that you've lived since childhood. That favorite home that felt like home. And remembering the smells and the sights, the dinner cooking or the fireplace or the flowering trees outside. And think about your favorite memories in that home of who has gathered together there, and that sense of family and home and comfort and joy. And that's what Jesus is talking about. That sense of home, that sense of belonging, that sense of comfort and joy and a place to be. And Jesus is saying, I'm going to go and take you there. And then he says, whoever believes in me and does my works, this is what's going to happen. Now, as confusing as this all is, the part that I take comfort from is the fact that he says he's going to be with me. And I know that to be true in my life. Whenever I've come to where it's just a grid and there's no cell service and I have no idea what comes next or where I'm headed, when I turn to Jesus and believe in him, he shows me the way. I know because Jesus tells us that at the last, he is going to come and take us to where he is. And what comfort and joy in the fact that Jesus will come to me and take me by the hand and lead me to where I'm going. Because today Jesus says, you will know the way because I am the way and the truth and the life. Believe in me, do my works. And when we say we still don't know the way, Jesus has given us that book that shows us the way. But not only that, he is with us. He is leading us and guiding us. And I hear that in the psalm today, Psalm 31, verse 3, be my strong rock, a castle to keep me safe. For you are my crag and my stronghold. For the sake of your name, lead me and guide me. Jesus is always right there to bring us that comfort, that sense of home, that sense of peace, his love, and will lead us and guide us when we turn to him. So this week, I invite you to settle into Jesus' embrace and make him your home. The place where you find that comfort, where you find the joy, where you find the love, the place that you will abide, dwell, live forever. Amen.